The New York Giants fumbled away a golden opportunity against the New Orleans Saints. We're breaking it all down coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And we thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Giant fans, another loss. You know, just when we think the Giants had turned the corner, they go and they deliver another stinker. That's right. Giants losing to the New Orleans Saints, previously winless New Orleans Saints, 26-14. The Giants looked good to start the game, but then it all fell apart. They fumbled it away, just like they fumbled the ball throughout the game. So, in this episode, we're going to take a look at the Giants beating the Giants. That's right. The Giants beat themselves, as far as I'm concerned. We're going to take a look at some coaching issues and where does this team go from here. Short work week. Eagles are coming into town. Eagles lost to the Denver Broncos. Where do we go from here? Short of maybe starting to look at the draft. I don't know. But let's get into it, all right? Obviously, the story of the game this week for the Giants, the turnovers on offense. All right? 5 turnovers. The last 5 drives of the game for the Giants, not counting the one where they, turned it over on downs, the 5 drives prior to that, turnovers. And the New Orleans Saints were able to cash in and score 13 points off those Giants turnovers. You are not going to win when you turn the ball over, especially when you turn the ball over multiple times like the Giants did, which is just absolutely, a no-brainer, okay? Now, here's what I am probably most upset about with regards to the turnovers. Some of the fundamentals were lacking in this game, all right? Now, what do I mean by that? Why was Jackson Dart, for example, running with the ball and swinging it, holding it out, and not protecting it as a runner, not holding it high and tight? All right, he had the ball knocked out of his hand. That's fundamental stuff, all right? That should not even be a question of what to do. So, I'm not going to say, should he have known better? Yes, but don't they teach him that? What are they teaching him in practice, right? Then you saw an example of Cam Scatterboom also not securing the ball, and he had the ball removed from his grasp. Bo Collins, a receiver who stepped in when Darius Slayton had to go down with the hamstring, stopped in his route. And I just look at all this stuff, these mistakes that are all born from fundamentals, and including not just the turnovers, but the mistakes on defense, the pass interference and all that stuff. And I'm like, what are the coaches teaching these guys? What are they learning in the classroom? What are they emphasizing in practice? Are they spending time on the fundamentals, or are they bypassing that because they just don't have enough time? I don't know the answer. We can't see the practices during the season because we're not allowed to see it. But I know something is rotten in East Rutherford because it's the same mistakes that are being made week after week after week with fundamentals. And it's just ridiculous. All right, what else? Where was the pass rush? Did anybody happen to see if the pass rush got off the bus? I mean, was there a rule instituted that said because of that big production that they had last week against the Chargers that they couldn't follow it up with more? Giants had 0 sacks against Spencer Rattler. 0. with that defensive front? I don't get it. How does that happen? I just don't understand how that happens. I really don't. Okay? Now, what else? All right, just sticking up on the pass rush. Spencer Rattler was under pressure 45.2% of his dropbacks. He completed 57.1% of his passes when he was pressured. And like I said, nobody really got within sniffing distance of him. And then you had the back end of the defense. What were they doing? All right, what were there? Something like 3 defensive pass interference penalties? Obvious ones at that, because they were getting grabby? Again, what are they being taught in practice? You know, I don't understand it. At this point in the season, why are these fundamental mistakes still popping up? All right, Spencer Rattler had something like 3.04 seconds, according to Pro Football Focus, to throw the ball. No wonder why the guy had a good day, you know? My goodness. I mean, how did the Giants expect to win if they're not going to get after this quarterback? I mean, there were good things the defense did. They held the running game under 100 yards, first time all year. They were good in the red zone against the red zone offense of the Saints. But other than that, they fell apart. All right? The defense, let's go back to the defense for a second here. The defensive backs in particular. Drew Phillips, 8 penalties on the year, including another big one this week. Deonte Banks had something like, he had at least 1 penalty, pass interference. And Tyler Nubin, what is going on with him? He looked so good as a rookie before he, suffered a season-ending injury last year. Now he looks absolutely lost. So, what's going on? Is it coaching? Is it the players? Is it a combination of the two? I don't know the answer to it, but I see it happening week after week after week, and I gotta really wonder. Right? A couple of other things. Putting Deonte Banks out there on 3rd down. I mean, talk about force-feeding a guy into the lineup. You're doing that, why? Because he's a first-round pick and you've got to make a decision on whether you pick up his option year after this year, when it should be pretty obvious at this point you shouldn't? I mean, Cordell Flott, to me, looks like he's been playing much better. So why take him off the field and put Deonte Banks out there? I don't understand that either. And then, last point I'll make. Devin Singletary, all right? Really good between the tackles. But why are you asking this guy to run wide when he doesn't have the foot speed? If anybody has an answer, I'd love to know, because I sure as heck can't figure it out. So, the bottom line, and in case you haven't seen a theme here, and I'm going to go into it a little bit more in the next segment, yes, some of it is on the players, on the lack of execution. But a big part of it is on the coaching. And just after watching this performance, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, what are they doing in practice? What are they doing in the classroom? What are they teaching these guys? What are they working on with these guys? Because whatever it is, it's inconsistent, right? They look bad in week 1 and week 3, and now again in week 5. They looked halfway decent in week 2 and week 4. So I guess by that logic, week 6 coming up against the Eagles on Thursday Night Football, maybe they look good, although I wouldn't count on it. But it's just a mess. And what's the answer at this point? Well, we'll talk more about the coaching right after this. This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spot runs on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home. Whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades, these are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. A local spot feels like home because it's the kind of place where you walk in and everybody knows your name. The staff are like family, and they've been serving the community for years. And spending money there doesn't just support the business, it supports the people behind it and the community around it. In my neck of the woods, there are over 20 local businesses that are on Square, including one of my personal favorites, Red, White, and Q Smokehouse. Red, White, and Q is owned by a former Marine Corps veteran who not only serves up the best barbecue in central New Jersey, but who also gives back in so many ways to our local veterans. Local spots like Red, White, and Q are what makes the neighborhood feel like home, and so many of them run on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, please go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than just simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And I tell you, I hoped it wasn't too good to be true last week with the Giants winning, but they're right back to being the team that we all pull our hair out over. The Giants losing to the New Orleans Saints 26-14. Now, in the first segment, I talked about some of the things in the game that happened that just were very frustrating. But there's a common thread, I think, that weaves them all together, and that's coaching. Now, before I dive into this speech, if you will, yes, I acknowledge that the players have to execute. They have to be better. They have to, cut down on the mistakes. But here's the problem I have with coaching. All right. I mentioned the defensive backs being grabby, drawing defensive pass interferences. What exactly are they being taught in practice? And why hasn't this been corrected? Drew Phillips has 8 penalties now, team leader in penalties. What are they not teaching him? Or is it that they're teaching him and maybe he's not grasping it? I don't know the answer. I really don't. But I do know that the results aren't there. And when you don't see the results, it's not just necessarily a failure on the student's part, but it's a failure on the teacher's part, or in this case, the coach's part. So what are they doing back there? I don't know. All right. I look at Bo Collins, who was an undrafted free agent, stopping in his route because he maybe wasn't sure of what he was supposed to do. Did he really know his assignment? It looked like he didn't. You look at Jalen Hyatt, who didn't catch a ball, I don't believe, in the game. All right, despite having the opportunity. Why has he not developed? I know the kid works at it, but what's not clicking? Is it what he's being taught? Is it that he's just not a fit for what they're doing? Or is he just not a good football player? I don't know the answer. Evan Neal, another one. Evan Neal can't get on the field. Why? They're going to continue developing him at guard. Okay, well, why is he taking up a roster spot if you're not going to play him? There's too many of these instances where guys get buried on the roster. And I understand, okay, you won't have so many uniforms to give on game day. But wouldn't you like to see some of these guys later in the year get uniforms because they've earned it and not because there's an injury? And that's just hasn't been happening with this Giant team. And the question is why? I'll give you another question. Why are the penalties still a problem? The Giants right now are averaging 8.6 penalties per game. All right? 8.6. Last year, they only averaged 6.5. The year before that, 5.23. So the penalties have risen on average since, over the last few years. Why is that happening? All right? The pre-snap penalties. There have been 12 on offense so far this season. Shouldn't that have been cleaned up coming out of preseason? That's a problem. Why is there no consistency from week to week? Supposedly they put in this great game plan every week on offense and defense. Why is there no consistency? I mean, the only unit, to be honest with you, that's looked halfway decent and been consistent is special teams. Yeah, special teams, folks, which I will break down for you a little bit more tomorrow, by the way, because special teams have done really well. But why can't the offense and the defense find consistency? You're not going to tell me that the New Orleans Saints were, any better of an opponent than the Los Angeles Chargers. So why is it that the Giants look so good against the Chargers, but not against the Saints? Mistakes or no mistakes? Where was the consistency? All right. Why, and the big one, you look at Daniel Jones thriving in Indianapolis. Does that make you pause and think that, gee, is this coaching staff really doing a good job with developing guys? The evidence is mounting against them. All right. I'd like to believe in this coaching staff. I don't think they're bad, but the evidence is mounting against them. And quite honestly, I don't know what the answer is with this group. Do you fire Brian Daboll? Does that solve anything? I don't know that it does. Especially, given his involvement with Jackson Dart. And now if you say, okay, well, you fire him and you promote Kafka to, the interim head coach. Well, now Kafka's going to have to call plays and be the interim head coach. Is that really the arrangement you want at this point? Or do you just say, all right, you know what? We'll go through this season. We'll hope that we turn it around and we'll address this problem next year. I don't know the answer. I just don't. All right. So there's so many questions that I have about the coaching staff. And again, it's not all on the coaching staff. It isn't. Part of it is on the players. They have to take their share of the blame. But there's been enough instances, the lack of consistency, the inability to develop these guys and get them to the next level. The play calling this week, I don't think I had too much of a problem with. I was happy to see them use tight ends finally in the red zone. But even that at times during the year, you sit there and you say, what are they doing? And nobody just seems to have an answer. I don't know that there is an answer. And I'm not sure how they address it. But that being said, you got to move on. Short work week. I don't think anything happens this week. If they get blown out by the Eagles, we'll take a look and we'll see what happens. But the seat's hot again. And the only way the Giants coaches can fix that is to somehow get this team consistent. And that's a really, really challenging thing for them based on what we have seen so far. Okay, so that being said, what's next for the Giants? Talk about it after this. Hey, Giant fans, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And gosh, is it hard these days to follow this team. It's hard. It's probably hard for you guys and gals to be a fan because just when you think they turn the corner, with the successful start of the Jackson Dart era, it just all falls apart. So what are we going to get next week? Or I should say later this week, when the Giants host the Philadelphia Eagles, who, by the way, lost to the Denver Broncos. Well, it's a primetime game. And we all know that the Giants don't do well on primetime. So that's a concern, obviously. The Eagles have owned the Giants the last several games. All right? That's a concern. The Eagles are a much better team than the Giants. That's a concern. So just a lot of things adding up against the Giants going into the game. Now, obviously, you go out because you never know. The same argument could have been made with the Chargers. But history is not on the Giants' side. What else do we have here? All right, let's talk about a couple of other things. We have a new injury. Darius Slayton with a hamstring. Is he going to be ready? Right, they're already down Malik Neighbors. Now Darius Slayton, who was dealing with a groin, has a hamstring. I would be very surprised if he is ready to go come Thursday night. It's just too quick of a turnaround. The Giants are going to have to bring one of their receivers up from the practice squad. And that kind of leads me to my next point, my next little mini rant, if you will. All right. Now the Giants, as you all know, they did not sign anybody from the practice squad to the 53-man roster. The Giants brought up kicker Jude McIntyre and linebacker Neville Hewitt, right? It was Hewitt's third elevation. So now if they want him again, and they might because Swayze Bozeman suffered a ankle injury, Hewitt's got to be signed to the 53-man roster. McIntyre has one more elevation, I believe, before they have to sign him to the 53-man roster. But here's something that I just have to talk about. The Giants went into this game not having filled the 2 roster spots that opened up when they released Tamon Fox and when they placed Malik Neighbors on IR. Why did they not fill those spots? Because they don't have salary cap space to do it. They had to go and they had to do the standard elevations. As I record this, the Giants have the league worst in salary cap space. I think it's something like $1.8 million. Is there any wonder why this team is struggling with some of these injuries and filling some of these holes that are developing? So just overall, ladies and gentlemen, this Giants team is a mess again. What we saw against the Chargers, where we all thought, oh, great, the Jackson Dart era, things have turned the corner, the pass rush played the way it should be, the secondary was good. It seems like it was a mirage. Now, hopefully, it wasn't, but the evidence is stacking up against the Giants. And if it wasn't for Jackson Dart, who did some good things in this game, despite the turnovers, which, again, one was not his fault. Kid did some good things, made smart decisions, made some big plays, took responsibility for the loss, even though it wasn't all on him, but he showed leadership. He right now is the attraction to keep watching this team, because right now this team is a mess. And I sure hope the coaching staff has some answers on how to fix it, because right now this team could be unwatchable if it wasn't for Jackson Dart. So here's hoping they salvage it, because look, if they lose to the Eagles, and I would say there's a pretty good chance of that happening, season's over. The season will be done, right? Giants should have been 2-3. They're now 1-4. They lose to the Eagles, they'll be 1-5, and then they got Denver after that at Denver, which would make them 1-6 if they lose that one. The season will have been over, and it'll be time to start looking at the draft and how to fix this team again, which I feel like we do every year, early, a little too early than we need to. So we'll see. Maybe the Giants, like I said, they look good in week 2, look good in week 4. Week 6 is coming on. It's an even number. Maybe they look good. But please, Giants, Come up with consistency and not the bad kind, because the fan base deserves better. All right, Giant fans, that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Giants. As always, want to thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And if you made us your first listen of the day, we appreciate that as well. The NFL season is finally here. For your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler, the Madman Roland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, I'll see you tomorrow with an all-new episode of Locked On Giants.